right, so, as I said earlier, the short talk tonight by Stephen Whitty is entitled Astronomical Evangelism. And you might think that it's intended in a facetious way, but no, Steve is quite serious. He does have a background in religious evangelism, and he's noticed some parallels between what works in that field and what works and what doesn't work when attempting to bring astronomy to people who are not currently into astronomy, which is, of course, a very large part of what we as a club do. As we discussed at the board meeting earlier tonight, whatever else we did in the past, telescope making, outreach is our primary public function. And so, without getting into specific religious aspects of how things work, Steve is going to offer us some tips on how we can do better at evangelizing this particular passion. And Dale Parton had a little personal comment that I may as well share since she's not here. I'm not convinced of this, says Dale. There is no slouch when it comes to our religion himself, but I'm here to listen. So, Steve, teach us.
You're on. You're worse.
I left my reading glasses in the car. I'm going to wing it without them. No, thanks. Are you?
I'm blind, so it's okay.
Yeah. All right. So forget it. Come on. Oh, I see. So it's kind of working, I think.
This Linux?
Yep. It's Herschel box with Linux in it. Okay. This is my first experience with being proselytized by a Jehovah's Witness. This one on the right here, I had that same sort of "I didn't want to be here" expression when I was at the subway station. We had to wait for an hour and a half because the train was late and so on. This is straight from the Jehovah's Witness website, by the way. This really happens. They're at least honest. This is what I wanted to show is that often what they do is they come in pairs rather than just one. They don't usually go out in the middle of nowhere. They often come to your house. One of the problems with this approach is that to the prospect, it feels like being attacked by a gang. While this approach seems to work for the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's hard to imagine that it would work for an astronomy club. In my opinion, best likely is one-on-one quality time. So, astronomy outreach is the same as evangelism in any sense of the word. So this is at the 2012 Venus Transit. There were a dozen scopes, there were hundreds of people. We were there for several hours. I did the math, so when people came up and said, "Oh, could I take a picture?" I said, "Sure." All right, so I gave them some hints. I put my hand up there so that the sun, right, because you've got Venus over the sun, wasn't shining on our camera. She'd get a little bit better chance of getting a decent picture. I saw some of the pictures that they took. Everybody seemed to go away with a decent shot, so people were happy with this. If they missed it, it was only another 117 years. Or whatever. Anyway,
123.
But I also made sure that they knew what they were looking at, that, it was the sun, Venus was there, but also there were clouds, they were kind of weird, and, in the solar scope, there were sunspots, and so on. Why do we do outreach? When I was on the board, here at the Warren Club, the WAS was drafting updated bylaws. That's when I learned that the Warren Club's primary mission, as Diane mentioned, is outreach. And in fact, it was in that process that we added, I think, an outreach director. Is that true?
Yep.
So, for the WAS, the Warren Astronomical Society, this means sharing the excitement of astronomy, but it also means astronomy education, or astronomical education. So if astronomical distance is unbelievably far, then astronomical education includes the science of everything in the universe. And I have found an exception. As far as I know, the science of dental hygiene has nothing to do with astronomy. But another reason for doing outreach is for upkeep of the club. One of the churches I belonged to was failing. They had gotten to the critical mass. They didn't have enough people to really, well, they were in danger shortly of not having enough people to run the church. So they hired a consultant who said a bunch of things, but one of the things he did was he went to the Census Bureau and he found out that for that particular neighborhood in Boston, the average stay for people was 5 years. That's 60 months. So what happens is if you have 60 people in your organization in that situation, then you should expect to lose somebody once per month. You should expect to lose somebody every month, one person. And it's proportional to the number of people that you have, and the math turns out to be exponential decay. So here, if you do nothing and you start out with 120 people, then losing one person per 60 per month, then at 107 months you end up with 20 people, which is a number I chose because, as far as I can tell, that is the low bar for a club like this to keep going. Some of the clubs that I've seen elsewhere were really struggling at 20. So what is that? That turns out to be a little less than 9 years. 9 years is long enough that you don't notice it necessarily. Anyway, I should point out that there are other reasons for losing members. In addition to people moving, we have people die, or they just get pissed off for one reason or another. The math works pretty much the same. Now, if you can get everyone in the club to do outreach, and if you overcome attrition, and if you, above all of that, you achieve a rate of 1 new person per month per person in the club, then you get exponential growth. So here I started at 60, for no apparent reason. And at the same 107 months, you end up with 350 people. Now, that's more than this auditorium holds. But
Almost twice.
But having problems like that is a good thing. It feels like success. It's awesome. So, there's another thing that evangelism can do for you. When I started here at the Warren Club, the demographic here was retired white men. And I was exceptional in that I wasn't retired. I'm still not retired. But since then, we've made some inroads into broadening our membership. There are more younger people. I mean, we have some. I mean, it's ridiculous that we had nobody underneath the age of 50, I think, when I got here. And we have some women, not just spouses. And we have some diversity. It can be really difficult to achieve any kind of diversity if you don't start out with any. The lion's share of most evangelism is people talking to their friends. If you only have one group, you tend to get more of the same. But meetup.com has helped. This is essentially advertisement. It's not targeted at any particular group. People do still self-select, and what they're self-selecting is they're saying, I'm here sitting in front of my computer at home, and I really would like to get out and do something. So they go dancing, or they go whatever. And who doesn't like astronomy? Well, maybe in this room, I'm preaching to the choir. Anyway, but once you get people in the door, your job isn't quite over. What do you have to do to keep them here? Well, one of the things you have to do is you have to provide radical hospitality. You have to fully accept everyone. Now, this is not the same as endorsing everyone. Everyone has opinions, and they're entitled to them, and you're entitled to yours, so you can't just say, okay, everybody's going to have the same opinion. So, endorsing opinions and accepting people are different things. It's a little, it's not just a nuance, it's a real thing. Second, you have to provide fearless conversation. You have to engage in two-way discussions. You can't just lecture like I'm doing. You can't just lecture people. People want to be involved in the conversation. Speak boldly, share ideas, but let other people speak. Oh, did I mention, interrupt me with any questions you have whenever you have them? Oops. Provide genuine humility. Life is a journey that everyone goes through.
Wait a minute now.
Everyone goes through. You must be humble and truly address issues without giving the appearance of being above it all.
Something wicked this way.
Many of us are here, and they're here because they have self-selected to be here because we are convinced that we are the single smartest person on earth. But remember that everyone older than 10 has something that they can teach you.
A lot of people younger than that as well.
And you have to believe your story is exciting. If you don't, it's the wrong message. So, if your attendance is cyclical, then you need a message that can endure when there isn't a Hale-Bopp, or a closest Mars in 70,000 years, or a Venus transit that won't come back for another 112 years, or something. What's up tonight, maybe? In the news? My current favorite? Carbon stars. The good news is that the Warren Club has been doing very well with evangelism over the past 10 years or so, the 10 years that I've been here, the 10 years or so. My first event was at the Stargate. It was brutally cold in February, totally clouded over. Marty, sitting up front here, gave a tour of the observatory and the club equipment. And I was at least impressed enough to go to a meeting. In fact, I learned something I considered critical. I learned that the internet scope that I had picked out but not yet ordered had very, very low chance of fitting in my car. So I went to my first meeting. When I went to my first meeting, I was greeted by one of the club founders. I had no idea. And I was repeatedly made welcome. That's something that we have to continue. Anyway, thank you. Any questions?
Well said.
What size trailer did you get?
I actually took 5 more years here at the club. In fact, I used the loaner scopes to great advantage. And I finally bought myself a 10-inch scope that not only fit in the car I had, but fits in my current car as well.
So did you cancel the order on that first?
I never ordered it.
Okay.
for the record, it was a 13-inch, what the heck was it? Begins with a C. Coulter, yeah.
So you almost ordered
I almost ordered it.
Steve?
So where were you at the Venus Transit? What was the dome?
Oh, that's at Wayne State. The physics building, I believe, has an observatory on top. I've never been in the observatory. John?
Steve, can I point out that you and I have double-teamed people on multiple occasions, including police officers? It seemed to be pretty successful, at least as successful as Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, well, I suppose.
Except the Jehovah's Witnesses were probably better dressed.
They were.
Anyone else?
Do you have a graph of the Warren group?
Excuse me?
Do you have a graph of this club's growth?
I have no data whatsoever about this club's membership.
We were down to about 70, and we've been up between 100 and 140 for the last 6 or 7 years. So that said, at this meeting, we almost always have, this is extremely full. This is probably the most crowded I've seen it here. But usually we have 50 to 60 at this meeting and 40 to 50, around 40 at the Macomb meeting.
I don't take credit for this. I've given 2 sermons, by the way, in church. They were both about evangelism. They were not a draw.
Do you have an elevator speech?
At the moment, I say when I'm asked what I am, I say, well, I'm an evangelist. At the moment, I talk about astronomy. I have a TV show, so I guess I'm a televangelist.
A question, I'm not much into religion, especially at least for the last 45, 50 years, but what's the difference between evangelism and proselytizing?
Proselytizing, I think of it as a derogatory term. I don't think there's much
He's
else that's
stealing
different.
from one group to another, is what he's doing. That's what proselytizing is. He's trying to steal a believer from another belief system. That's what you're trying to
This
do.
could get us in a big fight.
That's the definition.
I didn't look it up.
We do meet at Red Coat Tavern afterwards, so this is the place to continue that discussion.
It's just stealing.
In light of Steve's suggestion that we make new people feel welcome, it is time for the break. I think as Jonathan will shortly announce, so let me remind that I would like to make all the new people tonight feel welcome by meeting them in the back corner and just chatting about the club with them.
All right. Any other questions? We have snacks tonight provided by